Hi guys, thanks for joining my talk. This is I'm very privileged and honored to be sitting here and talking to you. This is the second time I'm speaking at DevRel. Last time was Asia, and this time it's Tokyo. So I want to talk about DevRel for startups, and I want to also mention a few things that what your founders and investors care about when you're building or working for DevRel teams within startups. A quick introduction about myself. I'm Cherish Santoshi, currently the head of community at Savo Labs. Savo Labs is an SaaS company which deals in passwordless authentications. It's an API that developers can use to build seamless login pages. I've spent 8 years in DevRel. Some of the companies that I've worked with are Google, Amazon, and Hacker. Before we go ahead, I just want to make sure that all these opinions that I've expressed today are my own, and I'm not representing any company as of today. And like any feedback or any talk, these are only guidelines, and take them with a pinch of salt, and make sure that you apply your context before you apply these to your companies, because every company is different, and a general talk would lack the context that you would have. So the presentation flow would be so we'll first discuss startup stages. We'll only discuss till Series B. We'll discuss the stage-wise expectations and KPIs that your investors or founders will have, the business value of your community and indirect benefits that your community will add. Point three and four will always be there. Hence, I've kept a separate section. And on the last is question and answers round. So the first thing is startup stage. So this is something called SaaS funding napkin for a B2B business. This is released by point 0.9 every year. They've been doing it for years. It's fairly accurate. Of course, a little margin of error depending upon the country or market that you're in, but fairly accurate. So we're going to refer to this, and you can take this from this slide, or I post the links after as well. So the first thing is seed round. So whenever you realized that you need a seed funding and you've built an MVP, you go for a seed round, and you usually the round size for a seed round is 1 to 4 million US dollars, and the valuation could be anywhere between 4 to 12, right? So the first thing that you do as a team is hire a community manager or a head of community, or preferably both if you can. Your responsibility as a head of community or community manager would be to establish community vision and team strategy, have a 9 to 12 months of community plan and goals, set up community platforms. Now, keep in mind that assuming that we're talking about developers here, right, and we're at DevRel. So you'll have to be very careful when you pick about community platforms, because not visual platforms like Instagram and Facebook may not as great as developer platforms like Discord or Slack, right? So pick up platforms according to where your audience is usually there. A lot of user persona will go into that. You'll have to spend a lot of time just making sure that you spread awareness and then start acquisition loops, because you're just starting out in the market and people don't know about your product yet. And the second part, this is very important, is that you initiate a feedback loop for the product, because right now you're in seed stage, so your product is maturing. Once you initiate a feedback loop, your product will not only get better, but all the developers will feel sense of ownership in your product and will make your product better with you. The KPIs that will be judged upon are clear vision and goals, your acquisition and awareness channels. Now, two schools of thought on awareness and acquisition channels are one, that you can put all your efforts in one or two acquisition channels and go all in, or set up a lot of acquisition channels, and then pick up primary, put your efforts there, and after you get another round of funding, add a little more resource money to those channels, and then have them rolling in as well. This is what we do at Sabo. This is the latter part, that we've set up a lot of channels, but we're focusing on primary one at the moment. The third is product feedback that assists in product market fit, as we just discussed. What we're using, if usually DevRel companies are advised to use bottom-up strategy, which means that your community tells you what they want, which goes back to operations, and from operations they create a program and they tell the strategy or the leadership that this is what we should be doing. That way, that your product is product market fit right from the get go, because the feedback is coming from the market itself. And a lot of things that you would initially thought would not work or will work have been validated from the community right at the first step. So making sure that you use bottom up strategy or community feedback is extremely important. Now, clearly, you're going to make your product market fit, right? So you need SDKs, API documentation, and video tutorials so that people know about your product as in as much detail as possible and are able to use it, as clearly as effectively as possible as well. Okay, so now clearly you've raised some amount of money. You've shown that your community values the product that you have and they're willing to adopt it at a much larger scale. So now you want to reach more people and hence you raise more money. So the next round in Series A would be 7 to 12 million, and valuation could touch 20 to 50 million as well. Your team would now be added with developer advocates, program managers, and content managers. Developer advocates will advocate for developers ruthlessly. They will put developers' interests best at heart and they will champion their cause. Program managers are people who will run programs like MVP, student ambassadors, hackathons. And content managers are people who will create content for your community, both written, verbal, audio, video, podcast, and everything. And they will also maintain a calendar which is extremely important and you have to follow it religiously if you want to see some traction in the market. So the next thing that you have to do is find responsibilities for these people and for yourself. Okay, so you have realized that people are willing to adopt your product. So the next thing you do is acquire them on your product. So the channels that we had set up before, you can start engaging with them and start putting in more resource and money there. Social media, word of mouth content, all these are acquisition channels. These could be n number, depending upon what you're targeting. Now you want to engage with them also, right? Because you have more people in the team and you want to ensure that target market fit is established and you acquisitions happen at a much larger space if the community is engaged. So you keep doing more activities like video podcasts, talks, you do a lot of reward programs, and then you do hackathons and sponsorships, right? These are great ways to acquire more people and engage with the community as well so that you reach wider and more people adopt your product as well. And the third is obviously fostering and supporting frictionless adoptions. Now, keep in mind that a lot of like in this scenario, you are reaching a lot of people and giving them the opportunity to adopt your product. Now, if there are frictions and roadblocks in that, this is not a great experience for for the developer. So, to ensure a great developer experience, we have to ensure frictionless adoptions. You can do that by developer roundtables, sitting with them, understanding developer experience. And the fourth is transitioning to a freemium model. I'll come to the freemium model in further as we go further. Your KPIs will now be a clear acquisition growth curve. Now you'll have to show that you're growing month on month. In acquisitions, you also have to show adoption increment on a month on month curve. 20 to 50% is what we can look at, but it depends upon you and your company. The third is you can launch a student or campus or MVP programs performance, like we discussed in the responsibility part. You can set up a ground level engagement with students and developers so that the minute they turn into entrepreneurs or working professionals, they've given you enough mind share. They're well versed with your tech on your product and we will be happy to adopt them. Now, keep in mind that the person who writes you the check for your dev tool is not going to be the developer or maybe a developer. Plus, he's definitely going to be somebody in the leadership, a product manager, a head of product, director, or just CTO or CEO, right? But they will always get the buy-in from the developer. He will not or she will not buy anything that the developers will not use. So it's important that developers get frictionless adoptions. They are able to use your product, and then it's easy for the leadership to write you a check. And the last thing is increasing sales and marketing efficiency. Sales and marketing efficiency is how much dollars spent versus how much dollars earned. So if you're spending $1 and you're earning $1 back, then your sales marketing efficiency is one, and that's the ideal we should get to. We shouldn't be spending way more than we're earning. So community helps in that because community is the forerunner before sales comes in, like we just discussed, right? Ensuring and empowering community adopts your product will make your sales easy. So that's also the objective there. All right. So next round is Series B, and this is the last one that we discussed today. Um, in Series B, clearly, a product has shown enough traction, enough adoptions, and this significant interest in the market. Now comes the point where you'll have to monetize it properly, right? So what you do is you hire evangelists and ambassadors who will talk about your product long, far, and wide, and you'll build a revenue stream. Your responsibilities. Oh, by the way, round size would be 20 to 50, and valuation could touch 90 to 300. Your responsibilities would be building a community revenue stream, and I'll come to this in the next slide. Making sure your community refers more people. You do a retention via loyalty system or other channels, right? But now you have to not only engage with people, acquire them, but also make sure that they stay in the community, adopt your product, and buy it also using the freemium model. Your KPIs could be anywhere between 1.5 to 3x year on year growth. Now, again, this is not necessarily just community, but you'll be helping the overall company reach that level by by the responsibilities that you do. And you can take a chunk of that KPI based on your understanding. The second is, of course, sustainable acquisition pipeline. You are now focused more on generating revenue and monetizing. So your acquisition pipeline should be self-sustainable, and your community monetization plan should be the primary focus. And the fourth point is community net recurring revenue, because now we are retaining people. We have to ensure that we retain as many people as possible. I was discussing yesterday with Vera Tiago, who's a good friend and a mentor at DevRel, in DevRel space at OutSystems. She mentioned how she, using the DevRel teams that she had built, she brought down the first response time from 3 days to 2 hours, and that has led to a lot of retention in the community and obviously increment in growth. So a lot of examples there as well, and I'll discuss more as we go further. Okay, so this is the business impact of the community, and we'll discuss how revenue and everything happens. Now, a common question that I get is that how do I justify what is the business value, what is the revenue potential for my community? All right, so let's assume you have a community of 1,000 people, and you tell these 1,000 people that go ahead and adopt my product, and you do everything for them. You give them all the value that they need. And so out of these 1,000 people, 200 people end up adopting your product. And the freemium, now you give them a freemium package. Now the freemium package could be on based on features, volume, or any amount of potential features that you build. Now the least amount of freemium package that you're sending them is maybe $10, right? So 200 people have adopted your $10 amount of freemium. And the last thing is something called stickiness score. A stickiness score is basically a score that you give to your product based on how likely it is to stick with the developer. To give you an example, if you built a teacher selling website, it's not a very sticky. It will not have a lot of stickiness score because it's easy for them to go to another website. However, if you've built like an API which is going to be hard to change, expensive affair, and just really cumbersome, your stickiness score is going to be high. We have a product in Indian community called Tally. It's age old age old software for accounting, but it's still very hard to replace because the transition time from Tally to a new software is way too much, and hence a lot of accountant in tier 2, tier 3 cities still use Tally. Okay, so this is the business impact. 1,000 members is what you had. You gave 200 you had 200 adopters. The freemium amount was $10, and the stickiness score could be anywhere between 0 to 1. But considering you have an API, we gave it like a very generous 0.7. So if you multiply all of that, you'll get 1,400 as the amount, and your 1,000 member community is worth $1,400 now. So you can use this math to justify and defend your business impact of the community that you have today. That's one thing. Second thing of the business impact is referrals. Any referral that comes via community is twice as likely to stay as like a paid acquisition. The third is the retention. Now, if you were increasing, increasing user ownership, helping developers by solving their queries on your platform. You reduce the churn and increase the retention. Now, keep in mind that just how we have celebrities or sports teams that share their journey with us, and we are invested in them. The same thing happens as a product or as a company also. That the more you share your product or your product roadmap or your features with your developers, and they have a say in it, the more they are invested and feel the sense of ownership in a product, and they want you to win. So that's something that you can do as well. And obviously, if they have ownership, they will give you that lead in their company, increasing your sales and marketing efficiency and getting your foot in the door. All right. So some indirect benefits of the community. Um, Now, one thing is that there's a lot of moat and defensibility talk behind the community. Now, when Azure was entering the market, we had a lot of market share of cloud platforms for AWS. So a community built around AWS developers had a moat that that prevented Azure from gaining a lot of market share. So Azure came up with a lot of hackathons, and you can see this in Hacker Earth, and or maybe I can post these links later in the description too. That they did a lot of engagements with developers, so that they get well versed with Azure as a platform, and slightly gradually the market share increased because developers became more aware of Azure's features, how easy it is, and how easy, they become more invested in the product. Obviously, you can use it for hiring. In last 3 days, we've hired a few people from our community using the community roadmap and people who were part of the community. We've also encouraged people to create user-generated content, so you can sit back and let people create content for you and share it within themselves. That increases your content roadmap and also creates peer-to-peer learning. The fourth is distribution in inaccessible areas. A lot of developers that you'll be interacting to, you will not have access to their close network, like within their office or within their juniors or within their alumni group. But if they're advocates, they will happily champion your product in the areas that you'll never have access to. So this is another indirect benefit, and it's very important. Unidentified use cases by developers. Now, this is again very important. Like for any API, the success metrics are a lot, but two things matter a lot. One is how far and wide is your API spreading or is being distributed. The second is what are the different ways it can be used. Now, if you as a company, you may have a tunnel vision, but if you give it out to developers, they can use it in any way possible. So you may identify some unthought or unheard of use cases that developers are using for, and you can use that for your own company and bring that in house. Amazon does that in their marketplace. They bring in any highly selling product within their own retail platform. The sixth is thought leadership. If you're definitely, if you're adding a lot of value to the community and you're giving so much product feed, you're taking a lot of feedback. Developers, you have a community. Anything you say will be of extremely importance to the community, and they're going to champion that outside as well. So become a thought leader in the community as well. So these are some indirect benefits. All these things will matter to you and your founder investor quite a bit. You can use this narrative to build more confidence and to get more funds and to make sure that you and your management are aligned. That's pretty much it. In case you have more questions, you can get in touch on my LinkedIn, Twitter, or email. Fairly active on all these platforms, and happy to take any questions that you might